Hey there hikers, we are in Quorn. It's the 18th of June. We're heading back to Adelaide today, as was our original plan. However, we are heading to Adelaide from Quorn, not from Melrose. And that is a little bit of a story. So you'll see our last hiking day video, which was day 12 of our planned 14-day Hyson trek in the Flinders Ranges. As you'll see, we had a beautiful day's hike on day 12. We were really enjoying it and feeling really buoyed up from our previous day's hike, which was tough, and we were in a bit of a we hate hiking right now space. On the afternoon of our 12th day, we were kind of chatting about what our plan was for the last little bit of the hike and our camp for that night. We had planned to wild camp. I imagine most people do, because apart from paid accommodation at Katninga Station, there's pretty much nothing from Walkery Creek campsite where we camped to Wilmington, which is about 37 kilometres. Anyway, so we were hiking across beautiful farmlands on the afternoon of day 12 and talking about whether or not we were going to wild camp. We weren't keen, obviously, on wild camping on someone's private property, so we kind of thought we might walk down to the road and either hitch a ride into Wilmington and camp there overnight and walk out from Wilmington, or wild camp on sort of public land basically by the side of the road. So we're having this conversation as we're walking along the fence line. We'd had a really short, sharp hailstorm that afternoon, and I remember thinking at the time, well, that's the rain that was forecast for today, because we'd checked the forecast on the morning of day 11 and saw that there was rain forecast for the following day, but only a few mils, and a little bit of wind, but nothing that we were in any way concerned about. So we were still in our wet weather gear from that hailstorm. We hadn't sort of peeled everything off at that point. It was quite cool. And it was probably about an hour, maybe an hour and a half until till nightfall. And so we had plenty of time up our sleeves, and we were chatting about what our plans were. And all of a sudden the wind started to pick up. And we were walking past a field to the west of us, had two huge rainwater tanks up on platforms and fenced with a pump. So obviously the main water collection site for the station we were walking across. And I suggested to Mark that maybe we see if there was a suitable tent site in the lee of the tanks to get out of this wind that was picking up very quickly. And he agreed. We thought that was a good idea. So we went round to the tanks in this field and sort of managed to find where the spot was where there was the least wind. Unbelievably crappy tent site. I was not happy. I didn't want to stay, but Mark said, he felt we
didn't have a choice. I mean, I could see the weather rolling in.
Yeah, it really was rolling in.
Massive black storm front.
Unexpectedly and very quickly. So we're sort of clearing the tent site as best we could. Started to get, we got the fly staked down, and Mark put 4 big rocks on each of the shepherd's hook pegs for the fly. I got my tent pole up and my guy line pegged down, and Mark was doing the same. And then he called out to me and said, "I've lost a peg, can you come and help me?" So even though it had a huge rock on it, this peg from the fly had just come out.
And it was huge. I mean, these rocks were like 15, 20 kilos a piece.
Huge. Anyway, so I went racing around, and the fly was just whipping everywhere. We could not get that end of the fly pegged back down. In the meantime, the pegs started to come out at my end where I'd staked everything out, and my trekking pole fell down. There was no way we were going to be able to pitch this tent, and Mark was basically lying across the fly at this point to stop it from blowing away. And I just said to Mark, look, we have to get out of here. We can't pitch our tent here. It will not stay up. So if we can't shelter here, then we have to get out. So at this point, like, this had all happened in the matter of a few minutes, because we pitch a tent fast. So, you know, this literally was a matter of minutes. It was black as night. Like, it had gone from being, you know, late afternoon, but
Still
quite stunning, high visibility, to being pitch black, no visibility at all. Mark stuffed the tent in the top of his pack. I said to him, we're going to have to get back to the fence and walk to the road and hitch a ride into Wilmington and get out of this storm. So I said, let's dump our excess water that we had for wild camping to lighten up our packs, which we did. Put our head torches on and started to make our way back to the fence, or where we thought the fence was. Well, we couldn't find it. It was so dark, so windy, and it had started to hail at this point. We couldn't find the fence, even though we knew we had only walked meters into the field, and we'd walked to the west. Or I had my phone out. We could not find the fence. It was the most bizarre situation.
And that was with like full high beam on our black diamond spot headlamps.
Anyway, it became really clear that even if we could find the fence, we weren't going to be able to walk through this. Now the hail had started. I think about 3.5 kilometres to the road. And even if we could, you know, how we were going to get a lift. And anyway, so I said to Mark, we've got to go back and shelter in between the two rainwater tanks, which we did. And then we decided we had to call for help. So...
because we were basically freezing.
So Mark, before I hit the SOS on our PLB, our bivvy stick, I said to Mark, look, we're only a few kilometres from Wilmington. Let's see if you've got signal and call the police and see if we can get a local response. So he did that. He did have signal, got onto the police, spoke to the duty sergeant at Port Pirie, then got into sort of an SMS exchange with the sergeant, who was organising a SAPOL response out of Orroroo and coordinating SES volunteers to come and scoop us up. But in the meantime, because all of these calls are dispatched across to the same command centre, the head of the local CFS heard the call, and we had provided our GPS coordinates, so he knew exactly where we were. He got in contact with the landowner, Tom, who knew exactly where we were in his field in between two tanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. And they came and rescued us. So they had communicated with Mark that we would see blue and red flashing lights, and to signal using our headlamps, which we did, which Mark did, and they came and picked us up in their CFS truck with the heating cranked up and thermal blankets, and wrapped us up and took us back to CFS headquarters in Wilmington and booked us a cabin at the local caravan park, and then dropped us to the door of our cabin, which was amazing. We were obviously mortified that we had needed help to get out of this situation, and just in shock that this had happened so unexpectedly and so quickly. The landowner, Tom, said to us in the truck that he had lived there his whole life and never seen anything like it, and that it was totally unforeseen and that we should not worry about it. The owner of the caravan park said the same thing, said that he had struggled to get his animals under cover, and his pony had freaked out and bolted and he didn't know where she was. And so we were not the only people taken surprise by this storm. Anyway, so that was the end of our hike, really. We were in no way mentally or physically up to hiking out of Wilmington the next morning. We had gotten so cold that it took like a couple of days for our legs to stop cramping and feet to stop cramping and tingling.
And just random aching, like aching in my feet and ankles. And yeah, but a big thank you to the CFS in Wilmington.
Yeah, the response was absolutely amazing. So we just got some food into us and fell into bed at the Wilmington Caravan Park, and then messaged our new best friend and guardian angel, Kylie, who is the proprietor of the Elizabeth House Backpackers and Hostel in Quorn, where we had stayed on night 10, and asked if she had any idea of town-to-town transport so we could get back to her place for the last 2 nights. So we had somewhere really lovely to stay and spend the last couple of days of our long service leave. And bless her, she drove from Quorn to Wilmington to pick us up and brought us back to her beautiful house where we are now. And we're packed up and just about to head back to Adelaide in about half an hour on the bus. So we've managed to salvage a really lovely, few days, couple of days out of the end of our holiday here in Quorn. We've had a really nice time and looked at this beautiful town and just hung out and gone to the pub and done all of that. And we really had the most amazing 12 days hike. It just ended abruptly and not very pleasantly. So yeah, some lessons learned, and we'll probably do another little video on sort of reflections and things we might do differently next time. Although we've talked a lot in the last couple of days, and we really don't think there was a lot that we could have done differently to avert the situation we found ourselves in. Anyway, yeah, we're going to head back to Adelaide, start planning our next hike because we still love hiking, and we'll check back in with you guys soon.